Royal Guard and horse inspected by Captain Horse Guards. Royal Guard, King's Guard, Horse, London. On the Horse Guards parade, a large open space near the heart of the city, the first rays of sunlight were beginning to glint off polished boots, shiny helmets, and the metal of carefully maintained swords. The square was still mostly empty, except for the Royal Horse Guards, who were beginning their preparations for the day. Their bright red tunics stood out sharply against the soft gray of the morning, and the large black bearskin hats made the soldiers look taller and more imposing than they already were. James, a young guard in his first year with the Royal Horse Guards, stood quietly beside his horse, Thunder. Thunder was a magnificent chestnut stallion with a gleaming coat and intelligent, dark eyes that seemed to understand every command before it was given. James ran his hands along Thunder's mane, feeling the smooth strands between his fingers. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Today was an important day. The captain, a stern and highly respected officer, would be inspecting every guard and horse, making sure that they were not only ready for ceremonial duties, but also upholding the centuries-old traditions of the King's Guard. James had been dreaming of this moment since he first joined the Guards. The Royal Horse Guards were more than just soldiers. They were a symbol of pride, discipline, and history. Standing here in the cool morning air, James could feel the weight of that legacy pressing on his shoulders. Every detail mattered. Every movement, every gesture, every word spoken during the inspection was a reflection of not just himself, but of the entire regiment. The horses stirred slightly, their hooves clattering softly on the parade ground. Thunder nudged James with his muzzle, as if sensing the nervous energy radiating from his rider. James patted him gently. "It's okay, boy," he murmured. "We've got this." The horse whinnied softly in response, a sound that was both reassuring and comforting. Around them, other guards were also preparing, adjusting their uniforms, checking their swords, and making sure that their mounts were perfectly groomed. There was a quiet focus in the air, a mix of anticipation and disciplined energy that seemed to hum across the parade ground. James looked around, taking in the scene. The other guards were older, more experienced, but he felt a sense of camaraderie with them. They moved with a precision that only came from years of practice and dedication. Each guard knew his role, and each horse seemed to mirror that understanding. The sight was both intimidating and inspiring. James thought of his own training, the early mornings, the long hours of practice, the careful study of every movement, every command, every tradition. All of it had led to this moment, standing on the parade ground with Thunder, ready to be inspected by the captain. The sun continued to rise, casting long shadows across the square. The buildings around the parade ground, old and majestic, seemed to watch over the guards, their stone facades glowing warmly in the morning light. James felt a shiver of excitement run down his spine. Today was not just any day. It was a test of his skill, his patience, and his dedication. The captain's inspection was legendary. Stories of his keen eye and strict standards were told among the guards, and everyone knew that no detail could be overlooked. From the polish on the boots to the way the horse held its head, everything would be examined, and nothing less than perfection would be acceptable. James adjusted Thunder's reins, making sure they were perfectly straight. He checked the horse's hooves again, remembering the countless hours spent learning to clean and polish them to a shine. Thunder shifted slightly, stamping one hoof on the ground, and James smiled. The horse was calm, steady, and ready. That was all James could ask for. He took a moment to breathe, centering himself. He could feel his heart beating faster, but he reminded himself that nervousness was normal. Even the most experienced guards felt it. The important thing was to remain focused, disciplined, and confident. As the time for the inspection drew closer, the parade ground began to fill with more guards and horses. The sound of hooves clattering against the stone mixed with the quiet rustle of uniforms, creating a rhythm that was both tense and beautiful. James noticed the older guards nodding at each other, exchanging small gestures of encouragement. It was a silent language, built over years of shared experience. James felt a part of something larger than himself, a chain of history that stretched back through centuries of ceremonial tradition. The realization filled him with pride, but it also made him even more determined to do his best. Suddenly, a distant figure appeared at the edge of the parade ground. James recognized the sharp, upright posture of the captain before he even saw his face. The captain moved with authority, his eyes scanning the rows of guards like a hawk. Every step he took echoed across the square, a sound that seemed to make the air itself tense with anticipation. James's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment he had been preparing for. The captain would inspect him and thunder, judging every detail, every movement, every expression. James straightened his back and lifted his chin, signaling to Thunder that it was time to focus. The horse responded immediately, standing taller, ears pricked forward, eyes alert. Around them, the other guards shifted slightly, ensuring that their own horses were ready and that their formations were straight. The parade ground was now alive with quiet energy, the tension building with every passing second. James could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, sharpening his senses. He noticed the way the sunlight glinted off the brass buttons of his uniform, the way Thunder's coat shone in the morning light, and the way every detail mattered more than ever. As the captain approached, James whispered softly to Thunder, "Stay calm, we'll do fine." The horse seemed to understand, lowering his head slightly in acknowledgement. James thought of all the lessons he had learned, from how to hold the reins properly to how to stand tall and confident under scrutiny. He thought of the stories he had heard from older guards, tales of legendary inspections where only the most disciplined and prepared had excelled. And now, it was his turn to be part of that story. The captain stopped in front of the first row of guards, his eyes sharp and calculating. He moved slowly, examining each soldier and horse with meticulous care. James's turn was approaching. He felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement, but he forced himself to breathe deeply, to remain calm and focused. This was not just a test, it was an honor. Being inspected by the captain was a recognition of the responsibility and privilege of being part of the Royal Horse Guards. James glanced down at Thunder, who nuzzled his hand gently. The horse's calm presence was grounding, a reminder that they were a team. Together, they would face the inspection, representing not just themselves, but the centuries of tradition that defined the Royal Horse Guards. As the captain drew closer, James felt a sense of determination settle over him. He would meet this moment with discipline, respect, and confidence. The morning air was filled with anticipation, the sun now higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the parade ground. The day was beginning, and with it, James's chance to prove himself. The morning on the Horse Guards parade was coming alive with energy. The first golden rays of sunlight had fully illuminated the square, and the red tunics of the guards gleamed brightly, reflecting the pride and precision of the regiment. James stood beside Thunder, adjusting the saddle one last time to ensure it sat perfectly on the horse's back. He ran his hands over the polished leather, checking the buckles, straps, and stirrups. Every tiny detail mattered, and he had learned through countless hours of practice that perfection came from care and patience. Thunder stood calmly beneath him, exuding a quiet confidence, as if sensing that his rider's focus was unwavering. Around him, other guards were engaged in similar preparation. Some were brushing their horses' coats, making them shine under the sun. Others adjusted the bridle, checking that every strap was straight and every metal piece gleamed. James noticed the older guards moving with quiet authority, their movements smooth and precise. He admired the way they handled their horses, the gentle but firm way they communicated without speaking. It was clear that their years of experience had taught them the power of subtle commands and calm control. James tried to emulate them, quietly brushing Thunder's mane in long, even strokes. James felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. Today was the day of the captain's inspection, a test that every guard knew was demanding and strict. The captain's reputation was well known. He could notice the smallest flaw in a uniform, a poorly polished boot, or even the slightest hesitation from a horse. James swallowed hard, his hands momentarily shaking, and then steadied himself. He whispered to Thunder, "We can do this, boy. Just stay calm and follow me." Thunder flicked his ears back, giving a reassuring nudge to James's hand. The bond between them, built over months of training and long mornings like this, gave him confidence. The parade ground was now buzzing with activity. The guards were lining up in precise formation, the sound of hooves clattering against the stone mixing with the quiet rustle of uniforms and the occasional clink of metal. Each horse was different, some tall and muscular, others smaller and lighter, but all were well-trained, disciplined, and proud to be part of the Royal Horse Guards. James noticed the way the horses responded to their riders' subtle signals, shifting their weight slightly, adjusting their posture, and even anticipating commands. It was a dance of discipline and trust, a partnership built on understanding and respect. James turned his attention back to Thunder, carefully checking the horse's hooves one more time. He had scrubbed and polished them for over an hour earlier, but he wanted to make sure they were flawless. The sun glinted off the polished hoof, and James felt a sense of satisfaction. Thunder was ready. He adjusted the reins and gave a soft pat on the horse's neck, silently thanking him for being steady and patient. Around them, other guards were finishing similar preparations. The air was filled with quiet determination, the unspoken understanding that this inspection was more than a routine. It was a representation of centuries of history and tradition. As the morning progressed, the captain moved closer to the parade ground. James could feel the tension in the air rise slightly, like the calm before a storm. The captain's presence had a way of commanding attention, even from a distance. Guards stood a little straighter, horses held their heads a little higher, and every movement seemed sharper, more deliberate. James took a deep breath, trying to calm the fluttering in his chest. He reminded himself that he had trained for this moment for months. He had studied the techniques, learned the protocols, and spent hours understanding Thunder's responses. Now it was time to put it all into action. The captain stopped briefly at the edge of the formation, observing the guards as a whole. His eyes moved slowly, scanning the rows, taking in the posture of the riders, the condition of the uniforms, and the demeanor of the horses. James felt a shiver of anticipation run through him. He glanced at Thunder, who shifted his weight slightly, ears pricked forward. The horse was aware of the tension too, but he remained calm and focused. James whispered a quick encouragement, "Stay steady, boy, just follow me." Thunder's response was immediate, a small nod of his head and a soft step forward. James felt a surge of confidence. They were ready. Other guards were also preparing mentally. Some exchanged quiet words of encouragement, others adjusted a strap or polished a button. The camaraderie was palpable, a silent acknowledgement that everyone was in this together. James admired their professionalism, their ability to remain calm and focused even under pressure. He thought of the older guards' advice: focus on what you can control, not what you can't. Your horse and your training will carry you. He repeated the words to himself, feeling them settle in his mind. This was not just about impressing the captain. It was about doing justice to the role he had chosen, representing the Royal Horse Guards with honor and pride. The sun was climbing higher now, casting long shadows across the parade ground. The light glinted off the polished helmets, the brass buttons, and the metal bits on the horses' bridles. The sight was breathtaking, a combination of history, tradition, and meticulous preparation. James felt a sense of awe. He was part of something larger than himself, a living tradition that had been maintained for centuries. Each guard, each horse, each carefully placed foot and hand movement was part of this legacy. And today he would be tested in front of the captain, the ultimate judge of readiness and discipline. James checked Thunder's mane and tail one last time, smoothing any stray strands and ensuring that the horse looked perfect. He adjusted the stirrups and reins, then took a step back to observe his own posture. He stood tall, shoulders back, chin up, chest out, exactly as he had been trained. He felt the weight of the uniform, the polished boots, and the ceremonial sword at his side, not as a burden, but as a symbol of responsibility and pride. He was ready to face the captain's inspection. The captain finally began moving down the line of guards. His steps were deliberate, his eyes sharp and focused. James could feel the tension building again, every nerve alert. He whispered to Thunder, "Here we go, boy. Stay calm." Thunder shifted slightly, ears forward, eyes bright and attentive. James could feel the horse's quiet energy, ready to respond to any command. The bond they shared in that moment was unspoken but undeniable. They were partners, and together they would face this challenge. As the captain approached, James noticed the way he examined every detail. The way his eyes lingered on the shine of the boots, the polish of the buttons, the alignment of the reins, and the posture of both horse and rider. James's heart raced, but he forced himself to breathe slowly, keeping his movements steady. He reminded himself that the captain was not there to intimidate, but to guide and uphold the tradition that he, too, had sworn to protect. James felt a sense of determination settle over him. He would meet this moment with discipline, focus, and confidence. The minutes seemed to stretch, each second filled with careful observation, precise movements, and quiet anticipation. James adjusted his grip on the reins, ensured Thunder's posture was perfect, and stood as tall and confident as he could. Around him, the other guards were also under scrutiny, their horses responding with calm precision. James felt a sense of pride in being part of this team, part of a tradition that demanded excellence but also rewarded dedication, focus, and respect. Finally, the captain stopped in front of James and Thunder. The moment had arrived. James felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his composure. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and gave a subtle nod to Thunder. The horse responded with a slight shift of weight, ears forward and eyes steady. James knew that this was the culmination of all his training, all his preparation, and all his dedication. He had worked tirelessly for this day, and now it was here. The captain stopped in front of James and Thunder, his eyes sharp and calculating. Every movement, every detail of James's posture and Thunder's stance was under scrutiny. James felt a sudden surge of nerves, but he took a deep, steadying breath. He reminded himself to remain calm. He had trained for this day, and Thunder, sensing the seriousness of the moment, stood perfectly still, muscles relaxed but alert, ears pricked forward. The bond between horse and rider, built over months of long mornings and rigorous training, was more important now than ever. The captain's gaze moved slowly, examining the polished boots, the straightened tunic, the position of the sword, and the careful hold of the reins. He tapped a finger lightly on the metal stirrup, then observed the alignment of the saddle. Every action had a purpose, and James knew that the captain was watching not just to find flaws, but to see how each guard had internalized the lessons of discipline, patience, and precision. James's hands remained steady on the reins, his posture rigid yet natural. He whispered softly to Thunder, "Just stay steady, boy, we're ready." Thunder shifted slightly, responding to the reassurance, his dark eyes focused and calm. The captain moved closer, his boots echoing against the stone of the parade ground. He circled around Thunder, examining the horse's hooves, the shine of the coat, and the alignment of the mane and tail. James felt his heartbeat quicken but forced himself to breathe slowly and evenly. He had practiced this exact moment countless times in his mind, imagining every step of the inspection, every movement of the captain, and every response from Thunder. Now it was no longer practice, it was real. And yet, despite the nerves, there was a sense of pride swelling within him. He was standing in front of the captain, representing centuries of tradition, history, and honor. The captain finally stopped in front of James, standing tall and imposing. He spoke in a calm, measured voice, asking James questions about his horse, his training, and his understanding of the ceremonial duties required of a royal horse guard. James answered each question carefully, confidently, ensuring his words were precise and respectful. He described how he had trained Thunder, how he maintained the horse's diet, grooming, and exercise, and how he had learned to communicate with the animal through subtle movements and signals. The captain listened intently, nodding occasionally, his eyes never leaving James or Thunder. Next came the physical inspection. The captain tapped Thunder's hooves, checking their strength and soundness. James guided the horse gently but firmly, giving the commands that would demonstrate Thunder's responsiveness and training. Thunder lifted each hoof with precision, responding to James's instructions with ease. The captain watched closely, noting the horse's calm demeanor and alertness. James could feel a mixture of relief and pride as he observed the captain's careful attention. Every step, every gesture mattered, and Thunder performed flawlessly. The captain then examined James's posture and handling of the reins. He instructed James to demonstrate a few movements, such as turning the horse in a precise circle, slowing to a controlled halt, and maintaining a perfect stance. James guided Thunder with quiet confidence, the horse responding immediately to subtle shifts in weight and gentle nudges of the reins. Each movement flowed smoothly, demonstrating months of careful practice and the strong bond between rider and horse. James could see the faintest signs of approval in the captain's eyes, though he remained mostly stoic, as was expected. Time seemed to slow as the captain continued the inspection. He tapped lightly on Thunder's saddle, checked the tension of the reins, and ran his hand along the horse's flank. James felt every second stretch, his focus sharpening with each passing moment. He whispered reassurances to Thunder, keeping his voice low and calm. The horse responded, muscles steady, movements precise, ears twitching to every subtle command. Around them, the other guards waited, their own horses standing tall and disciplined, but James felt as though the world had narrowed down to just him, Thunder, and the captain. The captain asked James to demonstrate mounting and dismounting techniques, ensuring that every motion was deliberate and graceful. James followed the instructions perfectly, moving with the smooth coordination he had practiced for months. Thunder remained patient, standing firm under his guidance. The captain observed closely, tapping his chin thoughtfully, as though evaluating not just the actions, but the thoughtfulness and precision behind them. James could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, but he remained calm, steady, and focused, determined to meet every expectation. Next, the captain focused on Thunder's reaction to commands. He called out a series of instructions, some simple, some more complex, testing the horse's responsiveness and discipline. Thunder executed each command perfectly, turning sharply when asked, halting promptly, and maintaining a calm demeanor throughout. James felt a surge of pride as he guided the horse, knowing that their training had prepared them for this very moment. The captain nodded slightly, his eyes showing a hint of approval, though his face remained serious and professional. After a thorough inspection, the captain asked James about his understanding of ceremonial duties, the history of the Royal Horse Guards, and the significance of every movement performed during public events. James spoke clearly and confidently, explaining the importance of precision, discipline, and respect for tradition. He described the care and attention required for both horse and rider, the coordination needed during parades, and the pride of representing the monarchy. The captain listened attentively, occasionally nodding or asking a follow-up question. James felt a sense of satisfaction as he realized he could answer with knowledge, confidence, and respect, demonstrating his dedication and understanding. Then came a final test. The captain asked James to perform a complete ceremonial sequence. James guided Thunder through precise steps, maintaining perfect posture, smooth movements, and attentive control. The horse responded flawlessly, matching every subtle signal from James. As the sequence continued, James could feel the rhythm of their teamwork, the seamless connection between rider and horse, and the culmination of months of preparation. The captain's eyes followed every step, observing the precision, the confidence, and the respect for tradition. When the sequence concluded, the captain stepped back and studied James and Thunder for a long moment. James held his breath, waiting for the judgment that would reflect not only his performance, but his dedication, discipline, and ability to uphold centuries of tradition. Thunder remained calm, ears forward, muscles relaxed but alert, standing proudly beside his rider. James felt a mixture of anticipation and pride. This was the moment he had trained for, the moment that tested everything he had learned. Finally, the captain spoke, his voice calm but firm. He gave detailed feedback, highlighting the strengths of James and Thunder while offering advice for areas to improve. He praised James's calm control, his steady hands, and the clear bond he had formed with Thunder. The captain also noted small points for improvement, slight adjustments in posture, the alignment of the reins, and subtle refinements in movements. James listened carefully, absorbing every word, knowing that each piece of advice was meant to help him grow and excel. As the inspection ended, James felt a wave of relief mixed with pride. He had passed the most important test of his young career, standing tall before the captain and demonstrating his skill, dedication, and understanding. Thunder nuzzled his hand gently, and James patted him warmly, feeling a strong sense of connection and gratitude. Together, they had faced the challenge and succeeded, proving their readiness to represent the Royal Horse Guards with honor. Around them, other guards received similar inspections, each horse and rider performing their duties with precision and discipline. James watched his comrades with admiration, noting the dedication and effort that everyone had put into their preparation. He realized that each guard, each horse, and each member of the regiment contributed to a tradition that spanned centuries, a legacy that demanded excellence and pride. The moment was humbling but inspiring, reinforcing James's commitment to his role and the responsibility it carried. As the captain moved on to the next guard, James allowed himself a quiet moment of reflection. He thought of all the early mornings, the long hours of training, the careful study of every detail, and the countless small efforts that had led to this day. He felt a deep sense of pride, not just in his own achievement, but in the honor of being part of the Royal Horse Guards, a living symbol of discipline, dedication, and tradition. The parade ground, now filled with the sounds of hooves, commands, and quiet preparation, seemed to radiate a sense of history and purpose. James knew that this was only one step in a long journey. The inspection had tested his abilities, but it had also taught him lessons about focus, discipline, and the importance of the bond between rider and horse. He would carry the captain's advice with him, using it to improve every day, refining his skills and strengthening his connection with Thunder. The experience had been challenging, but it had also been rewarding, leaving him more confident, focused, and determined than ever before. As the morning continued and the captain moved down the line, James allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He and Thunder had performed their duties with precision, respect, and pride. The bond they shared had been tested and proven, and James felt a deep sense of gratitude for the guidance, training, and support that had brought them to this point. The Royal Horse Guards were more than a role. They were a tradition, a responsibility, and an honor. And today, James had taken a significant step forward in embracing that legacy. The morning sun continued to rise over the Horse Guards parade, casting a warm, golden glow across the square. The tension that had filled the air during the captain's inspection slowly began to ease, replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment and reflection. James stood tall, his posture still firm, but now infused with a sense of pride. Thunder, his loyal companion, shifted slightly and nuzzled James's hand, as if sensing that the hardest part of the day was over. The bond between them had been tested and proven, and now there was a moment to simply breathe and reflect on what they had achieved together. Around him, the other guards were also beginning to relax, though their expressions still carried the discipline and focus that were a hallmark of the Royal Horse Guards. Some brushed their horses' manets again, ensuring they still looked perfect, while others adjusted their tunics, boots, or helmets. Despite the formality of their roles, there was a subtle sense of relief in the air, a quiet celebration of the hard work and preparation that had brought each guard to this point. James allowed himself a small smile, feeling proud not only of his own performance, but also of the dedication he saw in his fellow guards. James reflected on the captain's feedback. The words of praise had filled him with a sense of accomplishment, while the advice had reminded him that there was always room for growth. "Focus on the small details," the captain had said, "and always maintain the bond with your horse. Discipline alone is not enough. Trust and understanding are equally important." James repeated these words quietly to himself, understanding their significance. The captain had not only tested their skills, but also imparted a lesson in humility, patience, and respect for the centuries of tradition they upheld. As James walked Thunder slowly around the parade ground, he took a moment to observe the scene. Horses of all sizes and colors moved gracefully, guided by their riders with calm precision. The older guards shared quiet nods and gestures of encouragement, recognizing each other's efforts. Even in a moment of relaxation, the discipline of the Royal Horse Guards was evident. Every horse and rider moved with purpose, every step carefully measured. James felt a deep sense of belonging, understanding that he was part of something far greater than himself, a living tradition that demanded excellence, respect, and loyalty. He thought back to the nervous anticipation he had felt before the inspection, how quickly those feelings had transformed into focus and determination. James realized that the experience had taught him more than just the technical aspects of handling Thunder or performing ceremonial maneuvers. It had taught him about confidence under pressure, the importance of preparation, and the value of trust, both in his own abilities and in the loyal horse beneath him. Thunder, sensing James's reflective mood, lowered his head slightly, ears relaxed, as if sharing in the quiet moment of satisfaction. Around the parade ground, James noticed the subtle interactions between the guards. A quiet word of encouragement here, a gentle pat on a horse's neck there. Even though the inspection had been demanding, the camaraderie remained strong. James felt inspired by the way the more experienced guards supported the younger ones, offering guidance and reassurance without taking away the responsibility each guard carried. He realized that the Royal Horse Guards were not only a symbol of discipline and tradition, but also of teamwork, mutual respect, and shared dedication. The captain, having moved on to inspect the other rows, occasionally glanced back at James and Thunder. James straightened his shoulders whenever he caught the captain's eye, maintaining the calm composure he had displayed during the inspection. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that he had performed well, but he also understood the importance of remaining humble. Pride, tempered with respect for the tradition and the guidance of experienced leaders, was what truly defined a royal horse guard. As the morning progressed, James allowed himself to reflect more deeply on the lessons of the inspection. He thought about the careful grooming, the precise movements, and the countless hours of training that had led to this moment. But he also thought about the trust between himself and Thunder, the way the horse had responded to subtle cues and gentle commands. He realized that no amount of polish, uniform perfection, or precise posture could replace the understanding and bond they shared. It was this connection that had truly carried them through the inspection, and it was what would continue to guide them in their duties as Royal Horse Guards. James decided to walk Thunder toward a quieter corner of the parade ground, away from the immediate bustle. He wanted a moment to process everything, to appreciate the effort, the dedication, and the honor of being part of the King's Guard. Thunder moved with calm, deliberate steps, ears twitching occasionally at distant sounds, yet remaining responsive to James's guidance. The horse had become more than a companion. He was a partner, a friend, and a symbol of the harmony between human and animal that was essential to the traditions of the Royal Horse Guards. While walking, James noticed younger recruits observing the older guards. Their eyes were wide with admiration, and James remembered the same feeling he had experienced when he first joined. He thought about how inspiring it was to see a skilled guard and horse perform with precision and discipline. The realization brought him a quiet sense of responsibility. He understood that one day, he too would serve as an example for the newer recruits, passing on the lessons he had learned from both his experiences and the guidance of leaders like the captain. The captain's presence lingered in James's thoughts. His feedback had been both firm and constructive, emphasizing the balance between discipline and care, precision and understanding. James realized that being a Royal Horse Guard was not merely about appearances or following orders. It was about embodying the values of respect, dedication, and loyalty in every action. It was about being a living representation of centuries of history and tradition, a role that demanded constant vigilance, self-improvement, and pride in one's duties. James paused for a moment, patting Thunder gently on the neck. "We did well, boy," he whispered, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The horse responded with a soft nicker as though acknowledging the praise. The morning air was filled with the quiet sounds of preparation, the occasional clatter of hooves, and the soft rustle of uniforms. Despite the rigorous inspection, there was a calm, reflective quality to the atmosphere now, a recognition that hard work had been met with success, and that lessons had been learned for the future. Around the square, guards continued their duties, some practicing ceremonial movements, others grooming horses, and a few taking quiet moments to reflect, much like James. The scene was both peaceful and purposeful, a testament to the balance between discipline and care that defined the Royal Horse Guards. James felt a deep sense of connection to this tradition, realizing that the day's inspection was not just a test, but an opportunity to grow, learn, and become a stronger, more capable guard. As he led Thunder back toward the main formation, James thought about the future. The inspection had been a defining moment, but it was also just one step in a lifelong journey of learning and dedication. There would be more challenges, more ceremonies, and more opportunities to demonstrate skill and discipline. Yet James felt confident that, with the bond he shared with Thunder and the lessons he had learned from the captain and his fellow guards, he was ready to face whatever came next. The parade ground now felt familiar, almost comforting, as James and Thunder moved among the other guards. He noticed the subtle smiles exchanged between comrades, the quiet gestures of approval, and the unspoken acknowledgement of shared effort. The Royal Horse Guards were more than a team. They were a family, bound together by tradition, respect, and a shared commitment to excellence. James felt honored to be part of this community and inspired to continue growing, learning, and serving with pride. James stopped briefly near the stables, taking one last look at Thunder, who stood calmly, ears forward, eyes bright. The horse had been steady, responsive, and patient throughout the inspection, embodying the very qualities that the Royal Horse Guards prized. James patted him gently, grateful for the support, trust, and partnership that had carried them through the morning. Together, they had faced the challenge, learned valuable lessons, and emerged stronger and more confident. The captain's inspection had ended, but its lessons lingered. James felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that being a Royal Horse Guard was about much more than ceremonial appearances. It was about discipline, trust, dedication, and the quiet pride that came from knowing one was part of something larger than oneself. The morning had tested him, but it had also inspired him, strengthened his bond with Thunder, and reinforced his commitment to the role he had chosen. As the day continued, James walked Thunder back to the stables, reflecting on the morning's events. The parade ground, the inspections, the feedback, and the camaraderie all came together in a moment of clarity. He understood that the Royal Horse Guards were a living testament to history, tradition, and honor, and that every day brought the chance to uphold these values. With Thunder by his side and the lessons of the morning etched in his mind, James felt ready to face the challenges and responsibilities that lay ahead, confident in his abilities and proud of his place in this proud and noble tradition. The afternoon sun had climbed high over London, casting a warm, golden light across the Horse Guards parade. The morning's tension and anticipation had long passed, replaced now by a sense of calm pride and quiet satisfaction. James led Thunder slowly across the parade ground, allowing the horse to move at a relaxed pace. Every step felt lighter than it had earlier, as if the success of the inspection had lifted a weight from both of them. James looked around at the square, now bustling with activity, yet carrying the peaceful, disciplined rhythm that only the Royal Horse Guards could maintain. James thought back over the morning, replaying every moment in his mind. The meticulous preparations, the nervous anticipation, the captain's careful scrutiny, and finally, the relief and pride of completing the inspection successfully. Each step had taught him something valuable. The morning had been a test of skill, patience, and composure, and James felt a deep sense of accomplishment for having met that challenge. He realized that the experience had strengthened not only his technical abilities, but also his confidence, his sense of responsibility, and his connection with Thunder. Thunder, sensing James's reflective mood, lowered his head slightly and trotted quietly alongside him. The horse had been steady and calm throughout the day, responding perfectly to James's commands and movements. James patted him gently on the neck, feeling gratitude for the partnership that had carried them through the morning's challenges. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and careful understanding, qualities that were essential for any Royal Horse Guard. James realized that this bond was as important as any drill, any polished boot, or perfectly aligned uniform. Without it, the discipline of the guards would lose much of its strength and purpose. The other guards moved around the parade ground, some practicing ceremonial formations, others tending to their horses, while a few walked quietly, reflecting on their own inspections. James noticed the camaraderie that persisted even after the rigorous morning. There was a quiet pride shared among the guards, a recognition that each had worked hard, faced challenges, and done their best. James felt grateful to be part of this community, understanding that the Royal Horse Guards were not only about individual excellence, but also about teamwork, support, and mutual respect. As James led Thunder closer to the stables, he reflected on the lessons he had learned. The captain's feedback had been both encouraging and instructive. The praise had filled him with confidence, while the suggestions for improvement reminded him that growth was an ongoing process. James understood that excellence was never a final destination. It was a continuous journey. Each inspection, each parade, each moment on the parade ground was an opportunity to refine skills, strengthen bonds, and uphold the honor and tradition of the Royal Horse Guards. James paused for a moment to observe the square. The afternoon sun highlighted the gleaming uniforms, polished boots, and shining horse tack. He noticed the discipline, coordination, and precision that were evident even in casual movements. The scene was a reminder of the long history and deep tradition of the Royal Horse Guards, a history that he was now a part of. James felt a sense of humility, knowing that he was standing in the footsteps of generations who had served with dedication, honor, and pride. He also felt inspired, realizing that he had the opportunity to contribute to this legacy in his own way. Walking Thunder slowly, James thought about the role of the guards in ceremonial events and public duties. Their precision, discipline, and professionalism were not just for show. They were a symbol of history, respect, and national pride. Every movement, every posture, every carefully maintained uniform contributed to a larger image of excellence. James felt honored to play a part in this tradition, understanding that even small actions carried significance and reflected the values of the Royal Horse Guards. As they reached the stables, James gently guided Thunder into the familiar space, carefully removing the saddle and reins. He ran his hands over the horse's coat, brushing it lightly to remove any dust or sweat. Thunder remained calm and patient, standing quietly as James attended to him. The routine was familiar and comforting, a quiet ritual that allowed the bond between horse and rider to continue strengthening. James whispered softly to Thunder, "You did amazing today, boy. I couldn't have done it without you." The horse flicked his ears back, responding as if acknowledging the praise. While tending to Thunder, James reflected on the personal growth he had experienced. The morning's inspection had been more than a test of skill. It had been a test of character. He had faced nerves, pressure, and expectations, yet he had remained focused and composed. He had learned the importance of preparation, patience, and clear communication, not just with his horse, but also with the captain and fellow guards. Each lesson would serve him well in future duties, ceremonies, and inspections. James understood that being a Royal Horse Guard required continuous learning and dedication, and he felt ready to embrace that responsibility fully. James looked around the stables, observing the other horses and guards. There was a quiet sense of order, respect, and care. Every horse had been tended to meticulously, reflecting the dedication of their riders. James felt a deep appreciation for the teamwork and discipline that maintained this environment. He realized that the Royal Horse Guards were more than ceremonial figures. They were caretakers, disciplinarians, and representatives of a proud tradition. Each day demanded commitment, focus, and respect for both history and the living animals that played such a vital role in their duties. After finishing with Thunder, James stepped outside the stables, taking a deep breath of the fresh afternoon air. The sounds of the city mingled with the soft clatter of hooves and the distant voices of guards continuing their duties. He felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had faced the captain's inspection with success and learned valuable lessons that would guide him in the future. The day had tested his skills, patience, and composure, and he had emerged stronger, more confident, and more committed to his role as a Royal Horse Guard. James allowed himself a moment of reflection on the significance of the Royal Horse Guards. They were a symbol of history, discipline, and national pride. Every parade, inspection, and ceremony maintained a connection to centuries of tradition. James felt a profound respect for the responsibility he carried and a sense of pride in being part of this legacy. He knew that his actions, discipline, and dedication were not just personal achievements. They represented the values and honor of the Royal Horse Guards as a whole. As the day drew to a close, James walked Thunder back toward the central area of the parade ground. The sunlight had softened, casting a warm glow across the square. The atmosphere was peaceful yet purposeful, a balance between calm reflection and continued preparation for future duties. James felt a deep sense of gratitude for the guidance of his superiors, the support of his fellow guards, the trust and partnership of Thunder, and the opportunity to serve in such an esteemed role. Looking out over the parade ground, James thought about the future. There would be more inspections, more ceremonies, and more opportunities to uphold the tradition of the Royal Horse Guards. Each day would bring challenges, lessons, and moments of pride. But he felt ready to face them, confident in his abilities, strengthened by experience, and inspired by the history and legacy he now served. The morning's inspection had been a defining moment, but it was also just the beginning of a lifelong journey of discipline, learning, and honor. James finally stopped near the center of the parade ground, taking a last look at the scene. The guards stood tall, their horses calm and alert, each rider reflecting the dedication, pride, and discipline that defined the Royal Horse Guards. James felt a sense of belonging and purpose, knowing that he was part of something larger than himself. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows and bathing the square in golden light. It was a perfect ending to a morning filled with challenge, growth, and achievement. James patted Thunder one final time, feeling a deep bond and mutual respect between them. He whispered softly, "We did it, boy. We're ready for whatever comes next." Thunder responded with a soft nicker, as if agreeing, and together they stood quietly for a moment, absorbing the significance of the day. James knew that the lessons learned, the confidence gained, and the pride felt would carry him through future challenges and opportunities. The parade ground, now quieter than it had been during the inspection, seemed to hum with the history and tradition of the Royal Horse Guards. James walked Thunder slowly toward the stables, reflecting on the journey he had begun when he first joined the regiment. He realized that the inspection had been more than a test. It had been a moment of growth, a chance to prove his dedication, and a reminder of the honor and responsibility inherent in serving as a Royal Horse Guard. As the sun set over London, casting warm shades of orange and pink across the sky, James felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The morning's inspection had ended, but its impact would stay with him forever. He had learned, grown, and proven himself. Thunder remained calm and steady, a loyal partner in every step of the journey. Together, they had faced the challenge, emerged stronger, and embraced the honor of being part of a proud, historic tradition. James finally led Thunder into the stables for the evening. The horse nuzzled him gently, and James smiled, feeling a quiet sense of contentment. The day had been long, challenging, and rewarding. Every lesson learned, every moment of focus, and every demonstration of discipline had contributed to a deeper understanding of his role, the importance of preparation, and the value of the bond between horse and rider. As the evening settled over the parade ground, James took a moment to look out at the city beyond. He thought of the legacy he now represented, the responsibility he carried, and the pride he felt. Being a Royal Horse Guard was more than a job. It was a way of life, a commitment to history, tradition, and excellence. And James knew deep in his heart that he was ready to continue on this path, guided by discipline, respect, and the unwavering loyalty of Thunder.